We're back for another canto of Dante's Inferno, and today's canto we're going to deal with Canto 6, which is the land of the Gluttons. So when we last left Dante, he was fainting because of his conversation with Paolo and Francesca, namely with Francesca. And one of the things I wanted to add on to that, in the land of the lustful, you notice that Francesca does all of the talking. Paolo merely kind of sits on the sideline and looks really sad, almost as if he regrets the position he's been put on, and Francesca was maybe more the aggressor here. So whatever the take on that, know that Dante, by being affected by them, by fainting, he's really putting himself in some sort of danger, at least his soul in some sort of danger. He's feeling a bit too connected to these sinners that he's encountering. So when he wakes up, he is obviously in a new region. They've moved a little bit further. Virgil has somehow managed to get him away from the tornado that is the lustful, and Dante finds himself in an area where he's being pelted by this harsh rain and ice that's coming down, and he sees these forms kind of sliding through the mud and the muck. It's actually worse than mud. And these sinners are being pelted relentlessly by their environment. And this is the land, we learn, of the Gluttons. So I'm going to read a little bit of what happens in that, and then we're going to take a little bit closer look and kind of dissect what Dante may be trying to accomplish here. So he says, regaining my senses, which had fainted at the sight of these two who were kinsmen lovers, a piteous sight confusing me to tears, new suffering and new sinner suffering appeared to me. No matter where I moved or turned my eyes, no matter where I gazed, I am in the third circle, in the round of rain, eternal, cursed, cold, and falling heavy, unchanging beat, unchanging quality. Thick hail and dirty water mixed with snow, coming down in torrents through the murky air, and the earth is stinking from the soaking rain. And so this whole atmosphere lets you know that one of the things Dante does with his environment and with his geography and with the sinners is he tries to mimic the sin that they've committed, not only in the punishment that they receive, but in the very environment that they find themselves confined in. And so in this realm, it's a muck, it's a continual downpour, and it's cold, it's wet, it's unrelenting, and it's just a muck pit. And then he sees in the distance, he hears this fantastic beast that he recognizes from mythology. Cerebus, a ruthless and fantastic beast with all three throats, howls out his dog-like sounds above the drowning sinners of the place. His eyes are red, his beard is slobbered black, his belly swollen, and he has claws for hands. He rips the spirits, flays and mangles them. Under the rain they howl like dogs, lying now on one side with the other as a screen, now on the other turning, those wretched sinners. When the slimy Cerebus caught sight of us, he opened up his mouths and showed his fangs. His body was one mass of twitching muscles. My master stopped, and spreading wide his fingers, he grabbed up heaping fistfuls of mud and flung it down those greedy gullets. As a howling cur, hungering to get fed, quiets down with the first mouthful of his food, busy with eating and wrestling with that alone, so it was with all three filthy heads of the demon Cerebus, used to barking thunder on these souls who wished that they were deaf. And so we see this figure of this three-headed demon, this dog who has this voracious appetite, and he's ripping these sinners apart with his claws and dividing them in two. And as sinners, they're fully conscious of it. They feel the pain. They feel kind of the terror of it. They feel the fear of it, but they are trapped. Okay, they cannot escape it, and they're stuck in this muck. And it says his cries, his howls are louder than theirs. They are making dog-like sounds as well. So what is this land of gluttons? So I don't want you to mistake the idea that gluttony only has to deal with food. Gluttony is a sin of excess, okay? And that can take many forms. It's an addiction, if you want to think about it that way. You can be addicted to food, certainly. As you saw with the lovers, they were addicted to love and sex and lust, okay? But you can also be addicted to alcohol. You can be addicted to drugs. You can be addicted to social media. all of those things that transform you, that in the end, they return to their vegetative state. So the muck, the slime that they're in, this mud, is basically the organic decomposition of this sin of excess. It is a garbage pit, okay, that's decomposed into a mud form and is continually being pelted with ice and rain. The sinners, because they've chosen this sin, they cannot escape it. It gives them no satisfaction. The only thing that they can do, because they have not chosen God as their Savior, what they've chosen instead is allegiance to their sin. And so they are getting it, they are just getting it too full to be mindful. And Cerebus represents this satiated state. Cerebus cannot get enough to eat. And even he's willing to chew on the slime that Virgil is able to stuff down his mouth. And so Dante is just repulsed by this, and he's surrounded by these sinners. They're everywhere. But one thing about these sinners that you'll notice is they don't seem to notice the others around them. Okay, even Francesca in The Lustful never seemed to take much notice of Paolo, okay, her lover. He's there, she acknowledges him a little bit, but then it's her story. And so in these levels, these early levels, the sin is really about the sinner themselves. They are highly vain, okay, and they have become the center of the universe, and that's why their sin is always revolving and always constant on them. And so Dante will continue through this level, and he recognizes a voice. Someone calls to him and says, "Hey, you know me." And Dante's like, "Are you sure? Because you're kind of icky looking. I don't think I recognize you." And so Dante continues. I'm picking up at line 43. "I said, the pain you suffer here perhaps disfigures you beyond all recognition. I can't remember seeing you before." And that's the thing about these levels of sin and about hell in general. It completely transforms and disfigures your body. Rather than be transformed into the glory and union with God, which you would get in that heavenly realm, Paradiso, instead you are transformed into the ugliness of your sin. "But tell me who you are, assigned to grieve in this sad place, afflicted by such torture that worse their wail may be, but none more foul." "Your own city," he said, "so filled with envy its cup already overflows the brim, once held me in the brighter life above. You citizens gave me the name of Chauco, and as for my sin of gluttony, I am damned, as you can see, to rain that beats me weak." So we're not sure exactly who this Chauco is. Historically, we can't place him. We have some guesses on who he might be, but there's nothing in that history that says that this guy was an overeater or anything like that. His addiction took a different form. In that case, it took the form of politics. So he's a very clear lesson to Dante, who also was in danger of idolizing the political affairs, basically being drunk on that power. And Chauco talks a little bit about Florence, and one thing about the sinners in hell, they cannot see their immediate, because they're so wrapped up in their own sin. They can see the past and they can see the future, but they don't see the misery that they're in, that they could easily get out of if they somehow turned away from their sin. They're wrapped into it. So these souls will have the ability to predict the future. Now this is where Dante the poet steps in. We know Dante sets the poem in 1300. He's actually writing it over a 10-year period, so he's really looking back. And so when he has Chauco give the history of Florence and predict what's going to happen, because Dante the pilgrim wants to know, well, what's going to become? There's some good guys there, are they also here? What happened to all my buddies? And Chauco will relate to him like how Florence is going to undergo some really pretty bad stuff before eventually it will come out of its maze or come out of its destruction. And so Dante is eager to hear that, but in a way it's Dante the poet looking back, commenting about his own history that he's aware of. So remember we said early on in the videos that Dante had aligned himself with a group called the White Guelphs, which was kind of I want to think about it as a mafia kind of thing, but it was run by a very powerful family that he married into, the Donatis. And so there's a lot of history that kind of goes back with that. But suffice it to say is he believed in his Catholicism, but he was not convinced that the Pope in power, Boniface VIII, was the right ruler for that, particularly because of his behavior and his kind of love of wealth. And so Dante will continue on. They work their way out through this canto, and then they arrive finally at canto number 7, where we will meet the wealth, the prodigal, the people who hoard money, the misers, the spendthrifts. So that'll be our next section. So thanks for visiting.